Well, good morning, Annie.
Good morning, Carrie.
And, I gotta start this day by saying,
Okay.
every time I sit in this chair,
Yes.
I feel like I'm being eaten by it.
Yep, me too.
Right? It's
There's
just like,
something like the wings coming out and holding you in. But then it's one of those chairs that you just don't want to get out of with a comfy book.
it's true.
No,
It's true.
It's like, and getting out of it is really not a pretty thing, just so you know. But you've all got that comfy space, right? So, it's Crumbs from the Pop-Tarts time again.
Yes.
And it is Friday, January, this is a pop quiz.
Okay, wait a minute. So, no, it's not a pop quiz, it's pop tarts.
I know, that's
So-
us, okay.
So the 31st is Sunday.
Right.
The 30th is,
So this is the 29th.
29th.
29th,
January
January
29th.
29th. It's a Friday. And our reading today is from Mark and the book of Mark, which is always just a nice read. But we're in chapter 6 and verses 47 to 56, if you want to read along. Or read afterwards. Follow us along now. We're going to read this?
sure, do you want to go?
Sure.
You want to read the whole thing, or do you want me to read part of it, or like what?
Now there's a pop quiz. Oh, I know, we're the
No, it's
Pop-Tarts.
not.
I know, it is a Pop-Tarts.
We're a little disorganized this morning.
No, we're
so.
not. We're just like bouncing around. It's
No,
okay.
not in these chairs, we're not. I'm being like sucked into it. But you made this beautiful thing about the like the
wings
wings
holding
are
it.
holding it. I know I'm being sucked in. I think the upholstery's gone. All right, sorry.
We'll be serious. Okay, I'll read 47 to 52 and you read 53 to 56. How's that?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
I think you have more verses than me.
Oh,
No,
man.
it's okay though, because it's your turn to choose.
Okay. Oh, wow. Do we sound like sisters? Like little sisters? And you say, Mother?
I'm the cuter one.
I am so not going there. I'll get in trouble. Mark 6, verse 47 to 56. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and Jesus was alone on the land. When he saw that they were straining at the oars against the adverse wind, he came towards them early in the morning, walking on the sea. He intended to pass them by, but then they saw him walking on the sea. They thought it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased. And they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened.
When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his coat, and all who touched it were healed. This is the gospel of Christ.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I get the sense we came into the middle of a movie. Do you know what I mean? Like, just reading that, and it's just like, because that was the chapters that we were given to read. Oh man, like, is it? Do you know when you come in halfway through a movie, you go, huh?
Yeah.
What happened there?
Well, because, what I was thinking about there was, like, that first part you were reading totally lulled into that idea that it was that hearing of Jesus's voice that calmed them, right? So here I'm thinking, okay, so the direction today will be about focusing on his voice.
Right.
And yet then, when we jump to verse 53, it's all about action, right?
Yeah.
Now he's they're touching him, right? I love that last line, and all who touched it were healed, right? Because
Yeah.
they were talking about the fringe of his coat. So not only did they just, like, they didn't have to touch him, it was the fringe of his coat.
Yeah.
So something that was attached to him, right? Just by coming near, right? By having that faith. What they were bringing was a faith, a belief, wasn't it?
But also the reaching out. I can see, just people reaching out, just wanting to touch that part.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
anything, just touch anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting reading. I mean, living on the shores of Lake Huron and being so involved in the water, I can see what that wind could have been like, and trying to straining against the oars and the adverse wind. And of course, we can take that metaphorically to what's going on right now, that we're straining against the oars. Wherever we are and whatever we're doing, whether we're working or not, I applaud the teachers that went back to school this week.
Oh, gosh.
They're truly straining against the oars, right? So think of other ways that we've strained against the oars. So I'm seeing in this passage of, straining and trying to reach, and then at the end of it, reaching it
Yeah.
and touching it and being healed.
Yeah.
So it's in taking that extra effort, and I know it's hard and we really want to try, but reaching out and being not successful, because I don't know that was the goal of the person reaching out, but just to reach out and be healed
Yeah.
after there's so much adversity.
Yeah, and I love how you sort of point that towards the action of what's happening, right? So there's fear,
Yeah.
and Jesus speaks calm
Yes.
into the storm,
Yeah.
right? And then there is illness,
Mhm.
and Jesus speaks or reaches out into that illness. But we all have a part to play in that, right?
We
Like,
do.
we're not just puppets.
Yeah, we're
I
not
have this-
observers.
That's right, we're
Yeah.
not observers, we are
Yeah.
participants in this.
Mhm.
And so as God reaches out, as God talks to us, as God touches us, we then need to respond,
Yeah.
right? And so in the midst of all of this anxiety, in the midst of all of this fear, we're called to lay that aside
Yep.
and place ourselves into God's hands,
Right.
right?
So, or get in the boat.
Or get in the boat, or like, because
Or help.
when you look at verses 53,
Mm-hmm.
right, like people were, as Jesus went into villages and cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces, right?
Yeah.
So there was this risk involved, this vulnerability
Yeah.
where people
That's right.
would actually then have to take their loved ones
Mhm.
or drive themselves
Mhm.
into those places where they thought he might be.
Right.
And so again, it wasn't just lying in bed waiting for him to come,
Right.
right? Like they brought themselves into those places where he would be. So how do we bring ourselves into those places where Jesus can be found?
I mean, being with Jesus is taking risks, right?
Absolutely.
Like the guys in the boat, they were taking risks. Bringing the sick to the marketplace to be near Jesus, that's a risk. We have to take risks, and I think being complacent, especially right now, in talking to some people the other day, it wasn't about like worrying about everybody else. You have to worry about yourself. What can I do? Little old me, little crumbs from the Pop-Tarts. What can I do to make a difference
Yes.
and to be that agent of change? And whether it's, wearing the mask or whatever it is right now, but those folks, they saw something in Jesus that they needed to be part of, and they reached out. And they
did.
took their loved ones to be healed from whatever affliction. You notice there's no list,
Right.
right? Just says sick. It could be mental, it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be anything, but they just wanted to be near Jesus. That's taking a risk.
It is.
Yep.
And I think, when I think of all of the stories that we read, when we ask that question, where do we go to meet Jesus? I think we can meet Jesus anywhere.
Well, yeah, and this
With
year is
open
showing
hearts
it, right?
and open hands, right? Like,
Yeah.
Beyond the four walls
Yeah.
of our multiple buildings,
Yes.
right? Beyond the language of just the church, right? Seeing and realizing that Jesus is all around.
Yeah, we do know that people like to be in places where they feel a stronger sense. Like, the library overlooks the labyrinth. And it's funny because you can only see part of it, because only part of it's been shoveled off, because we have snow. It's January in Saugeen Shores. But you can only see part of it, but there's a comfort in knowing it's there, right?
Yes.
It's like seeing Chantry Island. If that lighthouse ever disappeared, we'd be really upset. Not saying that we worship the lighthouse, but the lighthouse saved a lot of people over the years. So there's that kind of thing that's there. And then we have our buildings, which aren't being used a whole lot right at the moment. But we have this, right? So is this a new way of following Jesus?
Is this a new way of reaching out and touching that fringe,
Oh, yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I
Well,
like it.
Yeah, and I just think, You know, the whole point of our Friday conversations, the whole point of our whole daily good news
Yeah.
is to find the good news of the gospel.
Right.
Not just written in the words of this book, but to find the good news of the gospel in our lives.
Right.
So how do we take what's written here and lie it against what we live
Right.
and find the good news?
Yep.
And I think that is with open hearts and open minds and open hands.
Yep.
Because Jesus is always reaching out to us.
And he did.
He did. And that is
Mhm.
good news.
It is good news.
It is.
From-
So I think that's
a good way to finish off.
that is. So this is Carrie
And Annie.
and Carrie and Annie.
We know who we are, really. We do.
With our Friday reflection, which is the Friday crumbs from the Pop Tarts.
Right.
Wishing you a very blessed day. So stay home, stay safe, and God bless. Bye-bye now.
Bye.